The draft has come and gone, and the Jets have a new crop of talent to usher in this new era of football with Aaron Glenn and Darren Mougey. We're going to break it all down and the picks and give you guys our grade for each selection. What's going on, Jet fans? I am your host, Julian Picasso, joined by my co-host, Nick Perry, as always, and this is the Gang Green Report. If you're tuning in, hit that like button on your way in and subscribe if you're new to stay up to date on all things with our beloved New York Jets. Let's get into this one, guys. Obviously, the draft has come and gone. For those of you that were live with me and Nick day one and me on day two, thank you guys for showing some love and support. We really appreciated whoever was able to, even if you were watching it post production. I really appreciate you taking the time to look that over. We're hoping that in the future we could do some more live streams and stuff of that nature. But let's get into Jets day one pick, and that is round one, pick 7, Armand Membou, right tackle out of Missouri. Guys, I'm not going to do too much of a discussion on Armand Membou. We talked about him at length throughout the pre-draft process, so you know who he is, you know what he's all about. But to me, I think this was a home run selection. Leading up into the draft, I was very, 50-50 on whether I wanted Membou or Tyler Warren. I think for a lot of Jet fans, it was either or. Leading up until the very moment of the draft, I kind of made my stance that I really wanted to go with tackle because I felt like, when you think about the optic standpoint of everything, it allows us to solve tackles at both bookends, and you have those guys for the next 5 to 6 years. So having Armand Membou come in, background in football, wrestling, natural bend, has really good flexibility, good coordination and balance, and he adds that nastiness in the run game, which will really help with the style of offense that we're going to be running this year. I really thought this was a home run selection, again, because you got a guy coming from Detroit and Aaron Glenn who has had that success on the offensive line for the last several seasons, having their bookend tackles for the year, and just being able to see what a successful offense looks like when you have all 5 positions on the offensive line taken care of. So for me, I'm going to give this an A selection. I thought it was a home run pick, and it solves the needs for not just now, but for the future. Now we don't have to worry about tackle in either position for the next at least 5 years. Obviously, Olu Fashanu, it's got 4 more years before we potentially exercise a 5th-year option or give him an extension. Armand Membou, you get 5 more years with him now with the 5th-year option. So you're solving tackle for the next couple of years. I give this pick an A. Nick, give us your take on Membou and what grade you gave him.
Yeah, I think watching the draft, I feel like all Jets fans, when it happened, literally gave a sigh of relief because I think you really nailed it, is that now we literally finally do not have to worry about anybody on the offensive line now. Now it's all about doing like teams like the Chiefs and the Bills and all these guys. They just go for depth on that offensive line, which is something that I think we're also stacking up on in the offseason, which is great. We have a lot of flexibility with where we can kind of move a couple people, a couple undrafted free agents. We got at a bunch of different positions that, chances are don't make the team, but are good depth pieces. They might stand out. But I think Armand is exactly, I think I was just like you too. I think 50-50 going up and down, but then it's you see them on the draft day and you're having a right tackle, like you said, bookend on both sides is all right, let's just do it. Let's just pull the trigger. So I think the Jets, he's exactly what the Jets needed. It strengthens the offensive line for years to come, at least 5 years with that 5th-year option, not having to worry about starters at all. God forbid an injury happens. Now we just have to worry about depth. We saw how he kept the QB clean. His run blocking is unreal. They had him, forget who it was on draft night. They said that they had him as probably the best offensive lineman in the draft, especially in that run game. He has freakish speed at 4.9, which is unreal. I mean, he just brings so much to the table. I think he let up no sacks last year, which is unreal. The past 2 years, I think he only had 1 sack and barely any hurries. I mean, he is just all around great. So overall, I gave him an A+, just because it's exactly what the Jets needed. So it's not like we went out there and took a flyer on somebody, but it was exactly what we needed, which is great. I think also, like you said, coming from Detroit, where wasn't on that side of the ball, but has such a good offensive line and helped them for so many years with Penei Sewell and all those guys. He realized, and I think that made him grow as a coach, that it's all right, if we could start from the bottom, start with the offensive line.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought building through the trenches was probably the best game plan going in for the Jets, especially with right tackle being such a big need. And that's really good because it leads into our round 2 selection at pick 42. and that was Mason Taylor, tight end out of LSU. So right off the bat, the Jets got rid of two of their biggest needs. I thought it was pretty obvious that aside from tackle, you really needed to nail the tight end position because we really did need somebody that could be coming in as a day one starter. I think Mason Taylor fits the bill with that. He's not exactly going to blow you away with his pass blocking ability. His technique needs a lot of work. It's good, but it does need a lot of work. He needs to maybe add a little bit of weight to his frame to really be able to handle those big edge rushers off the edge. But what he does give you is he gives you a phenomenal receiving threat. He's very smooth, very efficient with his routes. And I believe from the draft coverage, they did mention that he had one of the highest levels of separation at the tight end position in all of college football. So the guy gets open. So I'm not really too concerned about whether or not he's going to get open. He's going to find those weak spots in the zone coverage, and he's going to be very dynamic with the ball in his hands. He's not really known for being a guy, so not really big at being able to break tackles and just take the ball for long periods of strides. But he's going to provide you a ton of versatility and a threat at the tight end position. He's just going to need to get a little stronger. But I definitely think right away, this is solving your tight end one position. He's going to slot right into that right from day one, and he's going to be your starting tight end. And then you never know, we have two other young tight ends still on the roster that will fill in to potentially be that tight end too. We brought in Stone Smart, very young, very untapped potential, but showed a lot of flashes with the Chargers. And then we also have Jeremy Ruckert, who is a former teammate of our now starting quarterback, Justin Fields. So we don't know what we're going to get out of the tight end position, but I do really like this pick in day two to start off day two for the New York Jets. And I give this an A selection. I just thought you needed to hit on these two positions in particular, and I thought they really did a good job at doing that really early. So I'm going to give this an A selection. Nick, what are your thoughts on Mason Taylor?
Yeah, I think Mason Taylor, again, we hit exactly the two needs that we probably harped on the most before the draft, which is offensive line and tight end. So I mean, if it wasn't going in the first round with Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland, then we were definitely going with a tight end in round two. I think it was a great pick at the time with Warren and Loveland off the board. To me, it was almost I think to most people, it was a toss up between him and Ferguson at the time, tight end out of Oregon. I think he only went 5 picks later.
Yeah, I think he was
pretty sure. Yeah, he went to the Rams at 47. I think if we had, it wouldn't have changed my grade either way, I don't think, because I gave, spoiler, I gave Mason Taylor an A. And I would say that because he has that ability, he does have that ability to block. He's not, like you just said, some physical abilities are a little bit lacking, fast twitch, everything like that. So I think if we can kind of get him going, I think his ability to break open on single man coverage and then drops in coverage in the passing game. If we could just get those going, I think it'll be great. So I think with Jeremy Ruckert as well, he came in as an outstanding blocker. Maybe he can learn a little bit from him, even though he's taking a step back. Stone Smart, like you just hit on. I think overall it was great. It was a great pick by the Jets. And we always thought in our mock drafts that we were going to take RJ Mickens with a connection to Aaron Glenn. Well, we took Mason Taylor, which is a good connection to the Jets anyway with his dad.
Yep.
We were all there.
Yeah,
I think we just didn't know who it was going to be.
We had in a couple of our mocks where we did take Armand Membu in the first round. I think we did take Mason Taylor in the second round. Or if he wasn't in the second round, I think we took him in the third round. So there were a lot of our mock drafts where we did have Mason Taylor. So I will say that we at least hit on those two guys when we did that situation. There was that. But obviously, round 3 then comes next at pick 73. And this is where I think the Jets fans kind of got a little confused as to what we were really doing as a team. There were a lot of guys still on the board around this time that were really talented level players at positions of need. But the Jets end up going with a cornerback out of FSU, and that's Azariah Thomas. Thomas is a big, long, and twitchy cornerback with really good length in terms of his arm length, 85th percentile in arms, very, very good at the line of scrimmage in press coverage, has massive hands that when he gets on you, it's really tough to kind of get moving and get your release going as a receiver. Overall, very good athleticism. I think the only knock on him going into the draft was his 40 time. I think he had a 4.5 or 4. Yeah, it was a mid 4.5 range. Yep. And as a corner, obviously it's a very big glaring problem if you're not a 4-3 or under type guy, because they want to have big, long, fast corners. But I think if you turn on the tape and you actually watch Thomas play, there's a lot of times where he's literally stride for stride with some of these big time 4-2, 4-3 guys at the wide receiver position. One of them being Kyle Williams, which was a big fan favorite for a lot of Jets fans who went a couple picks before to the Patriots. There's a video of him at the Senior Bowl literally going toe for toe with him and locking him down and even getting a pick on the play in the Senior Bowl practices. So, for a lot of Jet fans that are kind of souring on this pick, I definitely think you're getting a top tier talented player at the spot that fills a position. I know a lot of fans are upset because we spent a lot of money on Brandon Stephens to potentially be that cornerback too. But in a way, if you look at the salary and how it's distributed across his contract, there's a lot of guaranteed money up front, but there's not a lot of guaranteed money on the back end. So if in case Brandon Stephens doesn't work out, you can cut your losses with him halfway through the contract. And Azariah Thomas could very well be your, opposite Sauce Gardner as your cornerback too for the next several years. Again, this is a guy that you're now potentially have for the next 3 to 4 years and beyond if you want to extend him, if he ends up playing well throughout his career. But this is a guy that's got phenomenal footwork, really good impress man coverage, and he can be really impactful in a cover 3 role as a shuffle technique in off coverage, which is really good considering the Jets' new defensive coordinator, Steve Wilks, likes to run a lot of cover 3. So I can see this being a very good pick. And on top of that, he will be just 20 years old on draft day and 21 in his rookie season. So the Jets continue to go with young, talented players. Our first 3 picks alone are guys that are 20 to 21 years old. So we're adding young pieces that are talented to this team. And I really love this pick overall. I think Dom C, which is, kudos to him. He's one of the better draft evaluators, who's also a Jets fan, content creator online. He had him as his top 18 prospect. He had him as his 18th prospect. So if you're getting a top 20 at pick 73 in the draft, you're getting tremendous value. So I give this pick an A. I know it's kind of cliche, Jets homer, like giving 3 A's in a row, but I really do think the Jets hit a home run on these first 3 picks. Nick, give us your opinion on Thomas and what your thought process was when we picked him.
Yeah, I think I was not like super head scratching like I think a lot of Jets fans were. I think we hit on it a little bit. Even if you pay Stephens, we still need another CB to be there with him. But I think a lot of fans, like you said, were kind of like, what exactly is going on? We just paid Stephens, but like you said, the back end of that contract, very friendly. So I think if you just turn on the tape, you watch him, even what they showed on like draft day about him, I mean, he is shut down. 0 TDs last year, only letting up 141 yards total with 5 passes, 5 PBUs. And I mean, he has really no penalty issues. I think he only had 4 on the season, which is not a lot. His footwork is incredible. And he shows great promise. I mean, even like you said, even if there is any form of like an injury, I feel like he's a guy who can hop right in and get in there. So I think with Michael Carter and Sauce, I know we said it a lot too previously, anybody on the opposite end of Sauce is going to eat. And even Sauce says that himself. So I think he is just another guy who can do that. Sorry, I feel like I have to sneeze. But I think Sorry, excuse me. But I think being out there as a combo, just watching his tape, and not to mention like he was on Florida State and they were getting cooked last year in like the first couple of games, and he was the only guy out there not getting cooked. I mean, they were bad at the beginning of the year, and he stood out, and I think that speaks a lot to his person to go as high as 73, and for Dom C to have him as the top 18, I think is like incredible. So for us to give him at 73, but yeah, I had him as an A as well. Don't worry, grades start to change. Don't worry, like you said. But I mean, he's great overall for sure.
Yeah, I think overall, like we mentioned, you're getting 3 guys that could step into the team. At least, Azariah Thomas might not be a starter from day one, but this could potentially be your starting caliber corner next to Sauce for the next couple of years. So I really do like the pick overall because I think it provides depth and insurance, especially because, a big thing that people don't really mention a lot is because we got rid of Brandon Echols in the offseason too. So it's not like we have that assurance in the cornerback position outside of the guys that we currently have starting. Having depth and having a guy with this elite level talent that could come in and, play right away, potentially if you need him in a pinch, it does a lot. Going into day 3, though, this is where a lot of things start to change for us. Round 4, pick 110. The Jets go with Arian Smith, wide receiver out of Georgia. This is a guy that they had a top 30 visit with, but was the 20th best wide receiver on the board. He has 4.36 speed and has that ability to play gunner on special teams. The big issue was drops. This isn't a good pick in my eyes, at least from the, glass half empty kind of approach. We had Jalen Royals, Eric Ayominor, Nick Nash were all still on the board at the time of this pick. I definitely thought that those guys were all better options than Arian Smith. Even if this is your Irv Charles, replacement for being a gunner, this was just way too early. I felt like you could have got this guy in probably like the 6th, 7th, or even as an undrafted free agent. The 4th round is a perfect spot to get a quality player. I think they also could have gotten CJ West, who went a couple picks, after the Niners. We needed to address defensive tackle. We decided not to address that at all. CJ West was on the board, and he has to develop as a route runner. He's not the greatest, but he's not the worst. He's not the greatest, though. Connor Rogers for the SNY mentioned on X based on a comment that New York Matt said, if you follow people on X, saying that you can't teach speed. But Connor Rogers responded back saying, unfortunately, he needs to improve in everything else for the position, though, outside of the speed, which scares me a ton as a Jet fan. Obviously, having 4.36 speed, Aaron Glenn says, it reminded him a lot of Jameson Williams with his time in Detroit, and the Jets don't have that burner that could take the top off the defense. So I'm going to be optimistic and wait till we actually get to see this person play. But the drops are really scary, had a really high drop percentage last year, and had a lot of injuries leading up to his one full season at Georgia as a starter, which also is very scary. He had a lot of big injuries leading up and didn't really play a full season up until last year. So, those are all really things that are scaring me. Altogether, I gave this pick a C-. It's more of a wait and see. I don't want to give it an F, but I also don't want to give it a really high grade either. It's more of a wait and see for me. I want to see if whether or not he actually pans out. Who knows? The coaching staff might be able to get a lot out of him, and this could be our, dark horse guy that we didn't see coming. And I'm hoping to be optimistic in Aaron Glenn's talent evaluating background, and hopefully we were able to get a sneaky player that we didn't see coming. That's my mindset. Nick, give us yours.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit it too. I think like so many guys that we hit on were still on the board. I was like, even if you wanted like Nick Nash, I'm pretty sure he went undrafted anyway. You could have gotten him. I mean, I would have kind of preferred a lot of people over Arian Smith. I think Jalen Royals was clearly number 1 at that spot.
Yeah.
It was like clear staring us in the face,
Yep.
and we were all pumped about it. Didn't get him. Yes, you can't teach speed, but you wanted Jameson Williams. You're not Jameson Williams taking pick 12 in round 1. I mean, that's a far cry from Arian Smith.
Yeah.
At pick 110. So I mean, hopefully, like you said, he kind of pans out. I mean, he has that elite speed at that 4.36 with it was literally the 10th fastest at the combine, which is great. They showed Senior Bowl highlights, Senior Bowl workouts, individual workouts against the CBs. He was dusting people, but he does need work on like that route tree. And of course, the drops like a huge issue. We beat into the ground that we kind of loved that Aaron Lazard might be leaving because his drops were insane, and then we just added another Alan Lazard replacement. Not the same guy, but very similar. He's only 6 foot and 185. But I think, for me, it was more of like a C. I gave him like a C plus. I even wrote like down next to it, I was like, possibly if you prove me wrong, and a lot of us wrong, it could even be like a B minus, only because God knows, like you just said, it could be a dark horse. I mean, you never know. These guys, never know. These guys pan out all the time out of nowhere. So it's like, even if we just get a shred of like speed and get those hands working a little bit better, he could be something special, which would be great.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's like, the big thing for me is that, like, if this is, I mean, I like the fact that he's got the speed. I also like that he has the special teams experience, but it's like, if you're drafting this guy to be your gunner in year 1 and maybe like a rotational wide receiver, like, you could have done that in like the 6th or 7th round. Like, so that's really what gets me the most. But going into round 4, pick 130, this was actually a traded pick. We originally had pick 147. We sent that. I don't remember who we traded with, but I think was this the Eagles that we traded with?
Yeah, this was the
Yeah,
Eagles
this was
pick.
the Eagles. So it was pick 145 and 207 from this year for the Jets to the Eagles for 130. And we ended up getting Malachi Moore, safety out of Alabama. This was probably my favorite, I believe both of our favorite day 3 pick. 70 tackles, 10 passes defended, two forced fumbles, a really good chess piece all over the defense, low missed tackle rate, which was a big issue for the New York Jets. Can play all over in the nickel and play back in safety, which the versatility alone is very great considering we do need that strong safety across from Cisco. So we do need that spot. So safety was a big need. Up until this point, I was kind of getting really worried that the Jets weren't going to, solve safety at any point in the draft. So when they went up and made this trade, I got really excited because Malachi Moore was somebody that I was really high on going into the draft process. I kind of had him at my 7th best safety in the class. So I really thought that getting him in this position was a really, really good thing for the Jets. Strong career production, was a 5-year starter at Alabama, which is a big time program. And then when Aaron Glenn apparently called Brian Branch, because Brian Branch was also at Alabama during their time with Malachi Moore, he asked Brian Branch about him, and he said that he's an absolute dog, that you're getting one of the best safeties in the draft. So getting high praise from a guy that you're hoping can come in and play the same role and be that chess piece for our defense, that's a big, big time thing that I really, really, really like that the Jets addressed. Nick, talk about Malachi Moore.
Yeah, I think at this position, everybody was getting a little concerned. I think, like you, that we weren't going to hit on safety. I think at the position that we drafted him, like at 130, was insanely good value for Malachi Moore. I mean, like you said, 4-year starter at Alabama. I mean, this dude played over 3,000 snaps. I think he played like 3,100 snaps at Alabama, which is insane. Healthy snaps, too, to put a extra cherry on top. He's an outstanding tackler. He's literally just a hard-nosed, full-speed, downhill type of safety, which I think is great and exactly what the Jets need, especially the tackling part, because we saw some very big missed tackles last year. Yep. Like, when he's coming at you, he's coming for your head. He ain't coming to tackle you low. He's coming for you. 52 tackles on the year last year, only gave up 2 TDs, having 2 interceptions as well in the season. He played mostly strong safety, but has played free safety much throughout his career as well. Brings great size, 6 foot, 200 pounds. And I think just getting that high praise from Brian Branch, especially like you said, is great, especially a guy who has panned out pretty well. To say that he's getting a dog in him with Aaron Glenn, who he coached in Detroit, is awesome. So I think overall, I think for him was like, I wouldn't give him an A just because it wasn't at the top. So I gave him like an A.
Yeah. I would probably, I completely forgot to mention my grade at the end, but I did give him like a similar grade, an A minus. So, but yeah, I think this is a guy that could come in right away, potentially start right away next to Cisco, or he could potentially compete with Tony Adams for that second spot. So I could see either or happening. But that leads into round 5, pick 162, and that is Francisco Mougey, linebacker out of Miami. I'm hoping I pronounced that right. 6'2", 230 pounds, 4'6", 40 speed, and 35-inch vertical with a 10.5-inch hands. Primarily played in the box. Run defense is super solid and has really good upside there. He has good sideline to sideline speed. He's a bigger linebacker build compared to our linebackers that we have on the team with Jamien Sherwood and Quincy Williams. They're more of those slender builds, especially Jamien Sherwood. He used to be a safety, so he was a safety converted linebacker. So this really adds, this could be used primarily on earlier downs as a run-stopping linebacker. The Jets were really bad against the run the last year or two. So having a guy that is literally going to be there specifically for early down situations to stop the run is something that I really like. I can mostly see this guy, though, being on the field early as a special teamer. I don't see this being a starting linebacker. If anything, this could potentially be a rotational linebacker in year 1. Like I said, somebody on early downs who helps stop the run. We need that anyway. We need like a rotational will linebacker. We don't know what we have in Zaire Barnes. For all we know, Zaire Barnes could be that player, but bringing in some depth and assurance at the linebacker position was definitely needed, especially considering that Quincy Williams is on an expiring contract. So we might have to either pay Quincy or we might see him walk. I liked the fact that they did go after a linebacker. I'm going to be honest with you, wasn't super familiar with the player, but by going through his tape over the last couple days, I do like what I'm seeing from him. I just think he needs to work on a lot of things from a technical perspective, but I do like the upside here. I like the swing. I'm going to give it a C, C minus. Nick, what are your thoughts on Maui Goa?
Yeah, I think he adds just like you said, he has great depth. Obviously, we have Quincy. We just signed Jamie and then Zaire Barnes. So I think he has great depth. His speed at that 4.6 40 time at the combine. Definitely a bigger linebacker. I think you made a great point. I think a lot of linebackers in the league are converted into like these special teams players, and they play huge roles on the special team. So I think he could fit in great there. Good experience in college, 2 years at Washington State, 2 years at Miami. He played all 4 years. He's only improved, and is, like you said, he's a great run stuffing tackler, which is exactly what we need. Just any point in the game, there's hurry up offense, and you need somebody in there. Teams hurrying up, get to the line, 1 yard left, quick, whatever it is, dive, QB sneak, anything. We can at least throw him in there. Hopefully, just stuff the hole. So I think he's going to fit in great with us. He did record 7 sacks in 2023, which I thought was pretty nice when we kind of looked him up. 3 forced fumbles to go along with that, and a touchdown in every season that he's played. So I feel like he has good experience. He has plenty of time to learn behind, hopefully, Quincy, who stays around for a while because we love him. Hopefully he can do that, learn from Jamie, who just got paid, and who knows, like you said, what Zaire really has in the tank there. So that'd be great. But I mean, if all 4 can pan out and just fill in where needed, I think that'd be great. So I think I gave him a B minus only because the upside of him I think is really good. He can fit in, and also, like you said, not too familiar with the pick either. But the more you kind of do like research on him, the more you kind of like it, which is great.
Yeah. And that leads me into our last pick of the draft, which was a trade up. We got back into the bottom. It was the last pick of the 5th round, and that was pick 176. We traded up with the Ravens here. I'm going to be honest. I thought it was a bit of an overpay with what we ended up giving up. We ended up getting 176 in the 5th round this year and a 6th rounder next year. But we swapped them with pick 186 of this year, and then we gave them a 5th round pick in 2026. So I really didn't like the fact that we kind of had to overpay and give them a 5th rounder next year just to move up 10 spots from where we were. But I guess if you're going to go and get your guys, like your guys with Aaron Glenn and Darren Mougey, I guess you do what you got to do to go get your guys. I thought that the edge rusher position, especially, was kind of getting a little low. The quality of guys on the list were kind of dwindling down, and I thought, and this is a guy that we actually mocked a lot to us, Tyler Barron, edge rusher out of Miami. We had him mocked to us, I think, in a lot of our mock drafts later on. I think around this pick, so around pick like round 5, round 6, we kind of used him as like a developmental edge guy late in the draft. We picked him a lot in our mock drafts, and I like him a lot. He's a great pass rush player. He actually, and I'm going to use this because I really, really enjoyed this stat that somebody brought up online, but he actually has a higher pass rush win rate than Abdul Carter, and Abdul Carter was picked number 3 in the draft. So you're getting a very high productive pass rusher, had 10 sacks, 10 hits, 22 tackles. I don't hate the pick at all. Like, I felt like we could have gotten a better player earlier in the draft if we wanted to go this route, but he's a developmental edge prospect. The positives are he has a really good frame that can carry more weight. So if you really wanted to bulk him up, this is a guy that could handle that extra weight and use it well. He has a good motor. His legs are constantly moving. So, like, you always know that he's going to go the extra mile to try to make the plays. And he doesn't give up on plays. He possesses a lot of above average agility, especially in the stunt game. The only knock on his game is he kind of lacks that violence and that strength and power behind his moves. But in reality, what this looks like to me is a replacement for what's his name? We hate him.
Bryce Huff?
No, we hate him. He's on the roster still. I hate him. Clemens. This is your Clemens replacement. And however way we can boot him down the roster in the depth chart, or even potentially have him completely get off the team, by all means. So I like this pick a lot from that perspective. At least you get rid of Michael Clemens. But I think altogether this is a well-rounded athlete. just needs a little bit of that strength and power, which you can hopefully develop in an NFL weight room over the next couple of years. I really enjoyed the pick. I thought it was a very underrated pick. I'm going to give it a B minus because I think it
Mhm.
has a lot of upside. But again, to be continued. Could be a really bad pick, could be a really good pick. We don't know what's going to happen. I'm a little bit more of a Jets optimist, so it's not my favorite, but it's a sleeper for me.
For
So
sure.
I'm gonna say that. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, first of all, like you said, we hate him. My immediate thought was Bryce Huff because I
Yeah.
do hate him.
Oh
But
gosh.
no,
Yeah.
if we can make Michael Clemens anywhere, hopefully he's parking cars next year when we go to the game
Yep.
because he I don't know what he's doing out there, but he ain't playing football. And another, so yeah, I think Tyler Barron. Um, again, I think one downside is like I think he's 24 already, which
Older
at some point
prospect.
older prospect, which again isn't terrible, brings a lot of experience, which is great. 24 is not old by any means, but in
Mhm.
form of NFL terms, coming in that late, we draft guys like you just said coming in at 20 years old, like that's crazy. So I
Yep.
think 5-year player playing all at Tennessee and then finish up his last year in Miami. Again, I feel like he fits this AG scheme where he wants speed. 40, where he ranked fifth amongst defensive ends at the combine. Honestly, wanting to go a little bit higher in the draft, I think, like we were talking about. I think you hit on it a lot when we were doing our mock drafts. Is
Yep.
defensive end is a huge sleeper pick for the Jets this year, and there's a hard fall off, and we said it multiple times, especially with JJ coming off that Achilles tear, Will McDonald coming off an outstanding year this year. To pair them together, like you said, don't hate it in any means. Played another guy who's just like Malachi Morris, played over close to 3,000 snaps in his career, which is insane. And that stat was insane about Abdul Carter. I literally just heard that for the first time. So that was
Yep.
great. 26 sacks with his best season being last year, having 10 and 28 hurries. I think he had 18 hits as well. He does have some penalty problems, I did see, just with holdings, but can be cleaned up with handwork. Overall, just bring him into camp in that 5th round. A little bit of an overpay, I think, like you said, but it is good. I had him right around like that B minus, same as you as well.
Yeah. Overall, guys, I think this is a cool point to like transition to our overall thoughts. But overall, I think the Jets addressed a lot of positions of need, but I think ultimately the first three picks were slam dunk home run picks. I think the biggest thing that the Jets kind of failed to do, and this is where I think obviously as a first time GM, first time head coach pairing, is you're going to learn how to manage the board a little bit better on the draft day. I think the problem, and this is why they pivoted in the draft a lot, was because they felt like guys were going to continue to drop to them. And I think they underestimated when guys were going to go. Like we saw, I really honestly believe that the reason we ended up taking Azariah Thomas was not because we really wanted him. I think it was because Kyle Williams went 2 or 3 picks right before us to the Patriots. I
Yep.
think they had their eyes on Kyle Williams the entire time, and I think the Pats swooped him up, took him, and then we had to pivot and go to a different guy. I also think they reached on Arian Smith. I think, again, this was a guy that you probably could have gotten later in the draft. So altogether, I think they did a really good job. I'm not going to go ahead and say that they did terrible. I think it's more of a to be continued kind of thing because we have to ultimately see how these guys play. So I think overall, they did well, but they left a lot of meat on the bones. I think not doing their due diligence and getting a defensive tackle was also a big issue. I think instead of Arian Smith, they could have probably went CJ West and gotten a sure like defensive tackle to put next to Quinnen Williams for the next couple of years. If you substitute Arian Smith with CJ West and you get Arian Smith maybe with one of your round 5 picks, I think that's a better draft altogether. I think you hit on every position of need. D tackle, corner, safety, right tackle, tight end, and then you get your developmental left linebacker, you get your developmental edge or something maybe in undrafted free agency, or maybe you get Arian Smith later on as an undrafted free agent and you get all these guys anyway. I think right away that would have been a way better draft. That would have been an A plus for me, but I'm going to give this group a B minus altogether. I think it was a good collection of players with upside. I just think they mismanaged the board. Nick, where are your thoughts on the draft class overall?
Yeah, I think overall, I think I was happy. Another thing I like to bring up that you brought up on draft day is I think the Bills are now the most hated team because they jumped us
Yeah,
twice.
twice.
So
The Bills
literally the pick
jumped us,
before us.
and then the Pats jumped us. So like
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's insane. So does it show that they're a little bit worried? Could be.
Could be.
Positive, half glass half full. But no, I think overall, I'm glad to see that we didn't. Yes, we kind of reached a little bit on that Arian Smith, but I think every position we took and everything that we had was a position of need, which is great. Like we didn't go out there, like really didn't double dip anywhere, which I kind of liked. It was just an overall good draft for us, I think, as a first time head coach, first time GM. I think we'll see them back next year no matter what happens. So I think having them both, like you said, do their due diligence a little bit better, come in more prepared for next year, especially with who you want. But then I think there's also a lot of guys that fell out of the draft that people were expecting to go higher. So I'm glad we also didn't take a shot on them. So I think, they definitely did some due diligence, but they could definitely do more. Like I'm sitting here watching it on the TV, like I could do a better job there in the room. But I think overall, I would tend to agree with you. I think I had it more just like a B overall. So like a slight bit higher, not even great. But I think, like you said, you kind of replace that Arian Smith pick and you get even a much higher pick. I mean, a much higher grade. So I think overall it was a solid draft for their first time around.
Yeah, for sure. I think definitely, I don't know about you, but if I had to pick my favorite pick, I would say if it's not with the obvious ones like the Membus or the Mason Taylors, I'm probably going to go with Azariah Thomas. I think altogether, if you're getting a guy that's a top 20 player at pick 73, I think you're getting tremendous value. I think long, lanky, really explosive press man cover type corner, somebody that's like sticky in coverage, somebody that could literally be opposite of Sauce Gardner for the next couple of years if Brandon Stevens doesn't pan out. I like the idea. I like the swing there. So that's probably my favorite pick. If you had to pick somebody that's your favorite, who would you go with?
I think it's easily, if it's not Azariah Thomas, which I would tend to agree with you, I would definitely pick Malachi Moore. I think just getting the praise from Brian Branch is great. I think AG, he knew he wanted that safety somewhere, and for us to go up and get him, especially trading with like the Eagles, who took Makuba, so they probably weren't going to take a safety anyway. But knowing that he would have been off the board soon was stand out. I think it's exactly the position we want. He can literally come and compete day one, coming from a huge program in the SEC at Alabama, playing 40 years, 3,000 snaps. I mean, he just has it all, and healthy. Literally all caps, exclamation point, healthy, which is exactly what we need at safety as well because of all the Chuck Clark injuries over the last 2 years. Tony Adams has been banged up a little bit. But I mean, overall, I think he's a great pick.
Yeah, man. Guys, what did you think of this draft? Drop your thoughts in the comments. What did you think of the draft class overall? Which were your favorite picks, your least favorite picks? Hit that like button on your way in if you haven't already. Subscribe if you're new. And as always, guys, go Jets.